Hey guys, welcome to Bethel Online. My name is Jason. I'm one of the pastors here, and we're so glad you decided to make us a part of your weekend. No matter who you are, where you come from, we're so glad you're here. Our vision is to be a safe place for real people to encounter the real Jesus and experience real change. Our hope and our prayer is that no matter who you are or what you've been through, you know that you are loved and you are wanted here. We would love to get to know you better and help you connect with all that's going on. You can do this by going to our website at www.bethel.us or by downloading the Bethel app. You can find our app by searching Bethel Putco in your app store. Both online and in the app, you can fill out a digital connection card. It only takes a minute and it'll help us know how to serve you better. Another way you can connect today is through giving. Your generosity at Bethel directly impacts God's mission to radically change people's lives in Putnam County and beyond. Through the ministries of Bethel and the many local and regional organizations we support, people are able to see the grace of God and how much He loves them. You can always give on our website at bethel.us/give or in the Bethel app. Thank you for partnering with us and making a difference. Well, thanks again for tuning in online today. Know that you are wanted and welcome here, and you are loved. I hope you all have a great day.
Good morning and welcome to week one of our series called Heart Problems, dealing with the issues that can take root in our heart and create damage in our lives. This morning, I want to talk to you specifically about anger. How many of you have people living in your home, like family, and you're like, yeah, it's easy to let them live here. You know, they're around. We're used to them. We love each other. You know, we've got some sort of thing worked out to where we can live in the same house and we get along and coexist. But if you've ever had a guest, sometimes it throws off the dynamic of your home. You see, some emotions make good roommates, and some emotions make horrible long-term companions. Anger has been known to be destructive to our health. It's a okay emotion to have visit for a minute, but it's not a long-term roommate. When we live with anger in our heart and constantly are dealing with anger, it can affect our health. It can affect our mental well-being, and it leaches over into so many areas of our life. Is there a chance, my friend, that you've gone beyond giving anger a guest room and given it permanent residence in your heart? Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 and 27 says this: in your anger, do not sin. It doesn't say not to get angry, but it does acknowledge the fact that anger can lead us to sin, that if we hold on to anger for too long or we allow anger to take us a certain direction, that can cause damage. It warns us this so much that it says, do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. It's an okay temporary emotion, but it doesn't do us well as a permanent one. And then it says, and do not give the devil a foothold. The word foothold there is the word topos, meaning opportunity, location, place, or room. That by allowing anger to hang out in our heart, we are giving Satan room in our life to do damage. Emotion drives action, and sometimes we have to address what we believe to deal with our emotion. Is anger driving your ship? In Genesis chapter 4, verse 6 and 7, it's one of the first episodes of anger seen as it begins to damage humankind. When Cain and Abel are giving offerings to God, and Cain is now becoming angry, has become angry because God has rejected his offering. And he says, the Lord says to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? We might be able to hide the emotion of anger internally by stuffing it down, but in reality, it eventually comes out. He says, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? That maybe Cain had chosen to be angry at his brother, or maybe even angry at God, when in reality, some of what had happened to lead to this point was that he didn't bring his best to God. He says, but if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. How we deal with the emotion of anger will determine whether or not we give sin space in our life. Many of us would say that our deepest regrets came at a moment when anger overwhelmed us. We said that thing. We overreacted. We exploded. We blew up. We did something we couldn't take back because of anger. He says this, he says, sin is crouching at your door and it desires to have you, but you must master it. What does it look like to master the emotion of anger? There are some ways that we get it wrong, some ways that we handle anger incorrectly. One is that we express it too openly. After all, every time you feel anger is not a time to explode. There are those of us who deal with our anger by spewing. And you've seen this. It's the moment where all of a sudden you're around somebody, things have built up, somebody says something, and then somebody just explodes and spews anger all over the place. And the reality is, oftentimes when we spew, the wrong parties get impacted. You know, you had a bad day at work, you come home, you jump down somebody's throat at home, one of the kids didn't pick something up, and the next thing you know, you're just spewing anger at everything. And the whole evening then is ruined, but then also relationships can be damaged. Giving vent, Proverbs 29 verse 11 talks about giving vent to anger, and it says, fools give full vent to their anger. It doesn't mean that we don't have to occasionally let it out, let it be known, acknowledge the feeling. It says, but wise bring calm in the end. You see, when we spew our anger uncontrolled, unfiltered, it's really dangerous. Sometimes people do this by saying, well, I'm just really blunt, when in reality, they're just really angry and they lack the self-control to handle their own emotions. But the wise bring calm in the end. Do you want to be wise or foolish? Do you want to be around people who are wise or foolish? Part of wisdom is knowing when and if to give vent to your anger. And some of it happens by looking through and saying, is this a righteous anger or is this just a selfish anger? Proverbs 14 verse 17 says, a quick-tempered person does foolish things. It reminds me of a time when I was working on a tractor and I was trying to very gently pull a piece off of the tractor. And as I did, something went wrong and I broke it. And then I turned around and threw the wrench that I had. It was the only wrench, I'm guessing, for any mechanic out there. It was probably a 10 millimeter is my guess, because everyone's lost their 10 millimeter socket. No, seriously, in a moment of foolishness, and the next thing I know, I'm driving to the store to get the part that I broke and the tool that I had already had because I had been quick-tempered and acted foolishly. Number two, so there's spewers and then there's stewers. Letting go of anger and filtering our anger doesn't mean we just keep it in, because eventually it comes out. We incorrectly deal with our anger when we spew it all the time unfiltered, but we also deal with our anger incorrectly when we stew over our anger. I don't know about you, but I can have a bad day and catch myself having a couple little rough things happen. And then the chance is everything after that I encounter is also going to irritate me. Like every little pet peeve, unimportant thing, slow driver, no turn signal using drive. I mean, just the things that annoy me, noises, whatever it is that when I get angry and I'm holding it in and not acknowledging how I'm feeling, the next thing you know, I'm mad at everything, and internally I'm in an unhealthy place. David talked about this in the 32nd Psalm in the 3rd verse when he says, when I kept quiet, when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. Suppressing your anger, refusing to acknowledge your emotion is damaging to your soul. It's damaging to your body. And keeping silent will begin to waste us away. It's hard to live in the joy of a relationship with God when we're oozing in anger. There's a story in Luke chapter 15, verse 28. In the book of Luke 15, there's a story of the prodigal son. And there is a son who goes off and he takes his inheritance and he runs off. And the other brother stays home. And it appears that one of these brothers was the most disobedient. It appears that the one who had gone away was the most disobedient. But the other brother had stayed home. And even though it looked like he was close to the father, and even though it looked like he had stayed home and was obedient, inside he was very angry at the brother who had gone away. And he was back home making all kinds of internal accusations against his brother. And then when his brother comes home, his father is glad that this prodigal son has returned home. But what we find is that the anger of the other brother who had initially stayed home righteously had actually made him miss the joy of his brother coming home. And so the older brother became angry and he refused to go in and celebrate. The reality was our anger can lead us to sin if dealt with incorrectly. So what do I do with my anger? Some of you are like, well, it just feels like I'm not even supposed to feel angry. In reality, anger is a normal and appropriate emotion when we go through things, when we're wronged, when we experience pain, when we feel disappointed. Anger is a reasonable response. When we're frustrated, anger is a reasonable response. What do I do with it then? If I can't just hold it in and tuck it down like many of us were taught to do, or if I can't blow up and let everyone know, then something has to happen with it. See, there are really two kinds of anger. There's sinful anger. And sinful anger means that we're actually wrong in the direction of our anger. We're not only wrong in the direction of our anger, oftentimes our sinful anger is our attempt to avoid our own responsibility for what has occurred. So what do we do with that? We put it out. In Proverbs chapter 17, verse 14, it says, starting a quarrel is like breaching a dam, so drop the matter before a dispute breaks out. It's okay to communicate that you're mad. It's also okay to say, hey, I'm pretty mad about this and I want to let it go and I want to move on. And sometimes it's just about becoming better at communicating our anger. Sometimes we can literally be in the presence of people and they have no idea that we're mad, that we're angry. And one of the ways that we put it out is by communicating honestly. This is what I'm actually feeling. Sinful anger, put it out. There are places in your life where you're harboring anger and you simply have to acknowledge that it makes you angry and begin to move on. You have to ask yourself, is my anger righteous or is it out of a desire for myself? James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20 says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. I remember telling a counselor off one time because I had been wronged. I had been done wrong by some people. I was so mad. And I went into my therapy session and I unloaded all of the anger that I had. And I expected to hear my therapist say, I'm so sorry. And the response my therapist gave me was, Nathan, what those people did was wrong, but how you've dealt with it was wrong. You've allowed anger to inch into your life so much that you're stressed out, you're anxious, you're depressed because you have harbored such anger and bitterness to people. We should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry because human anger generally is not righteous. I remember when my therapist said this after kind of telling him off, and then I began to kind of come back at him and say, well, Jesus got mad. And he said, Nathan, the difference is that you don't automatically gravitate to Jesus-like behavior. So your anger oftentimes is not righteous. It says human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. As a matter of fact, our human selfish anger often produces sin in our lives. Then there's sanctified anger or righteous anger. What do we do with that? Anger can be like a fire. When it comes to unrighteous anger, we have to put it out. We have to stomp it out, acknowledge that it needs to die. But sanctified anger, we need to fan the flame. Is there anything going on in our culture that just breaks your heart? That it makes you mad that we're dealing with it in our culture? Maybe that's a righteous anger. There's a story in Mark chapter 3, and Jesus is in the synagogue. Jesus, the sinless, perfect, righteous Son of God, has come to walk among men. And he's in the synagogue. He's in the synagogue amongst Jewish people, God's people. He's in the synagogue with the most religious people around, with the people who are supposed to be the most righteous. And Jesus looks over the people who had experienced the power of God. And Jesus looks over, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. I love that Jesus notices that he's there. It says some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Now here they are in the house of God on the day of worship of God, where they should have been pointing to the righteousness of God, but instead they are looking to find fault in God. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled up hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked them, I think he knew what they were thinking, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill it? But they remained silent. Now, the people in the room remained silent about something that was the character of God. They were to care about the least. They were to care about the broken, and the religious system of the day had failed to do this. And Jesus, when he experiences that his people are not living by his action, is angry and distressed at their stubborn hearts. Jesus was angry because there was no necessity for this broken system that had been created. And he looks at the man and he says, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. You see, the place where they were in the synagogue really needed restored. But it didn't experience restoration because of the sin in it. But the man who was considered unqualified to be there, or would have been called a sinner based upon his infirmity, this man was restored because he encountered Jesus. Jesus' anger fueled him to continue to step forward. It says, then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. They were angry that Jesus had stepped on their turf. The very Jesus, the Messiah, who they were all waiting on, who many of them were declaring was coming, had actually stood in their midst, and they allowed their anger to lead them to sin and fall away from God. Your anger can lead you far away from God. So in your heart, some things have happened to you. You've experienced some things that maybe were your fault or weren't your fault, and you're angry. Science has shown that living in an angry frame of mind alters the physical health of our heart. But more than that, it damages our lives. I don't know about the anger you harbor, but maybe it's worth inspecting whether that anger is righteous or whether you actually need to confess your part in the events that led to the anger. I want you to know that Jesus is not afraid to enter into the hurt and angry parts of our life. And when we encounter him, we just might find that he has the potential to restore us. This morning, if you want to put your trust in him, all you have to do is to hand it over to him. Bethel, I love you, and and have a great week.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Are you ready to take your next step? We would love to hear from you. You can send an email to hello@bethel.us. You can send us a message on Facebook, or you can let us know in the Bethel app. And speaking of the Bethel app, take a moment, if you haven't already, to go to your app store and search Bethel Putco to download our app. There's all kinds of great resources in the app. You can listen to messages, you can view the messages from Sunday morning, and you can also fill out a digital Connect card. You can do that today and each week to let us know that you're tuning in. You can also find some great information about our Bethel Kids Ministry and our Be the One student ministries. Also in the app, you can give. It's one of 3 ways you can give, with online giving at bethel.us/give, in our app, Bethel Putco, or through text. Hey, thanks again for joining us. We hope you have a great day and know that you are loved.